start. Ready? Okay. Good evening, everybody. Good. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Shenendehowa Central School District Board of Education meeting. This is a study session. We started off at 6 for executive session. We'll talk about that in the announcements, but let's start. That was my call to order. Let's start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So one announcement, just a quick reminder, we had an executive session to discuss collective bargaining with our Administrators Association. And now we're returning back to the public portion of the meeting. So let's start with adopting an agenda. May I have a motion? First, Mrs. Blaber, second, Mr. Casey. All in favor to adopt the agenda? Okay, thank you very much. This is a study session. It's for the purpose of having administrative updates to the board. There are no public comments. Residents may attend the next business meeting on April 11th and/or contact the board via email at boe@shenet.org with comments, questions. All questions come into the office of the Public Information Officer and are shared with the board and our superintendent as appropriate. Policy questions, concerns are typically addressed by the board president. Operational questions are typically addressed by the superintendent and her designee. So at this point, we'll turn over to Dr. Robinson to start with his superintendent comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Presley. The only comment that I actually have, recognize we have a large group of talented young people in the audience, is to also recognize one of our talented staff members. And it's great that all you guys came out to celebrate her, so I'm sure she's absolutely pleased. As she comes forward, I ask Mrs. Rose Barrow to come forward. Mrs. Barrow, are you here? So Mr. Presser will read the plaque in a second here that we have from Mrs. Barrow, but just to kind of put things in perspective, we have tremendously talented students here at Shen. And we also have tremendously dedicated staff members, such as the coaches and advisors who are here, who get paid, but quite frankly with you, go well beyond any amount that we could pay them to dedicate the time and commitment to our young people. Mrs. Barrow has been the champion for our Shen robotics team for a number of years, and it's a team that has not only performed well in their own right, but it's a team that has also helped other schools develop and form teams, to the point where now the student is becoming the teacher. Other schools that we help develop teams are trying to kick our butts. So we help too much in some instances. And Mrs. Barrow was just recently recognized for that type of champion for children mentoring piece. And it is most appropriate that she's being recognized here at a night where we are recognizing our student athletes and our coaches for their prowess on the field. She was acknowledged by the students of robotics for their prowess on the robotics field. So Mr. Presser will read the certificate, and I would ask all of you to please join me in saying congratulations to a wonderful person and an even better professional. I use this typically to say the other way around, a great professional, but she's actually a better professional, because I've seen her over and over and over again. I'm thinking, my God Almighty, if we could clone her, we'll be so much better as an organization. So, Mrs. Barrett, congratulations.
So on behalf of the Shenendehowa Central School District and the Board of Education, the certificate of achievement is presented to Mrs. Rose Barrow. Thank you. Congratulations. In honor of being recognized as the recipient of the Woody Flowers Finalist Award for Robotics, this award celebrates effective communication in the art and science of engineering and design. Dr. William Murphy founded the prestigious award in '96 to recognize mentors who lead, inspire, and empower using excellent communication skills. So we thank you and extend our congratulations to you. Here you go.
I'm going to call somebody else out. Wesley, I see you in the background. Can you come up? And if there's anybody else from the team? This award isn't my award. This award is their award. This award is written by the students, and they're students from every team that participates in these regional competitions that nominates one mentor every year. We average about one Shenendehowa personnel per every 10 years that gets awarded with this honor. And it really is Wesley and the awards team that works so hard and so diligently to represent Shenendehowa in this way. And I'm very grateful. Thank you. Thank you.
One thing suggested by Cameron, or a student representative on the board, you want to mention a few things?
So I know as a family here, my family's been pretty drastically impacted by Mrs. Barra and her contributions to the robotics program. I know my dad's in the back there, and she's just wanted to thank her on behalf of the Brimhall family. I know we're just one of many families here at Shenendehowa that's been greatly impacted by your passion in robotics. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Cameron.
So just to continue with the show, every year the board reminds me that we need to ensure that we are bringing in various groups of students that represent the tremendous talents that we have here at Shen. And for the first time, we have our speech and debate team, and they're here to have a brief presentation to share with the board. Initially, I said, won't you guys do a mock debate? Then I realized, nah, let's not do that. We could be here for a long time. But on a very serious note, we have a very tremendous, talented group of young people who are here to give you a glimpse of the role of speech and debate and talk about some of their recent accomplishment as well. So members of the speech and debate, can you guys come up?
Here's just one research of what we do. And then on the other side, Mr. President, goes to you. This is just my stuff that states.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
And will you be going from slide to slide, or should we be there? Okay.
Good evening, everybody. It is truly an honor to be here in front of everybody. On behalf of the speech and debate team, my name is Michael Lilholt, and it is really, we are beyond thankful for this opportunity to speak in front of the board and other members of the Shen community. My name, again, is Michael Lilholt.
And I'm Jessie Ferrioli.
So again, tonight we are here to talk a little bit about the Shen speech and debate team. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about the more common of the two, the debating aspect, which is the part that I do. There are two different types. There is PF, which is public forum, and that's 2 versus 2. And then there's Lincoln Douglas, which is the type that I do, and that's 1 versus 1. And you get a new resolution every 2 months for LD, Lincoln Douglas, and a resolution, which is a case, for PF every single month, because you're working together on a team to try and ensure that you can get the best possible outcome throughout the case.
Now, I'll tell you a little bit more about the less commonly known of the two, and if you didn't know that there were 2 separate subcategories, well, you do now. So there is speech and there is debate. So Michael has just told you about the debate aspect of it. Now, speech is a completely different category. With speech, it's more of an acting component. There's humorous interpretation, duo interpretation, all different ways where a student will be judged on how well they embody the character and how well they get up and present what they're trying to portray. Now, the category I do is a hybrid in between both debate and speech. That's called extemporaneous. Extemporaneous speaking is somewhat of like an impromptu speaking on current events or on politics.
Next slide, please. Awesome. So, to the next slide, again.
Is this our presentation?
Yes.
Because we made edits on it.
Next slide. So, what are the benefits to individuals of speech and debate? Well, for first, they improve critical thinking, and this is imperative to remember throughout the presentation today. Also, debate fosters healthy competition among the smartest, the brightest students. And what I mean by that is a quick search in Google of 2014. If you search valedictorians who participated in speech and debate, more than 9 million results came back. This shows that there are truly a tremendous amount of people that are involved in speech and debate, and they later go on to be U.S. presidents, vice presidents, judges, activists. They become really the governing body of society.
And now we're about to see, after this, the effects on, so how the effects on individuals will then later lead to a greater impact on the school and as on the student body. So as we can see on the previous slide, all it was touching on was that there are students, even in examples of the past 2 years, namely Priyanka Thapa and Ellen Yang, who are going on to respectively Harvard and Yale universities. So we can see that speech and debate has bred excellence. It's a sport that is not just going to increase students' standardized test scores, which is always great to the school, and their GPA overall, but it's also going to breed excellence, critical thinking skills, better classroom discussions later on, which is later in turn going to impact the school community. So then if we're moving on to, here, would you like to touch on this?
Yes. So on average, as I have shown Mr. Casey, can you just hold that up for everybody to see? This is my case for states. Now, in case you don't know how many pages are in it, that's about 500 pages. I spend about 20 hours a week or more preparing for a case. As you see throughout different papers, these are previous cases that I have done. So I spend multiple hours a week preparing, almost kind of like you do with a sports team. You know, you practice every day, you work hard, and you try and make sure that you get the best possible outcome. My practice is researching, and this is seen throughout the fact that it's been compared to writing a senior thesis preparing for debates.
Yes. And moving on to the benefits for the school, this goes right hand in hand with the benefits for the students. So as we touched on earlier with the benefits for the students, it's going to increase their GPA and it's going to increase their standardized test scores, but in turn that's going to raise the prestige of the school itself. And also another thing to touch on is that Michael and I are starting up a middle school program because we're also starting to, we're going to give talks at the elementary schools because we believe that speech and debate isn't just, there's more than just the competitive aspect to it. There's critical thinking and there's the analysis and there's the structure and discipline that goes along with this club that really brings it to a new level. Your brain is going to think differently and you're going to bring something new to your community, and that's what we're trying to give back.
So this is just a brief explanation of what the average student grades are for those that are just in the school, those that are involved in the speech and debate team. These are national averages, not just here at Shenendehowa, and other clubs' averages as well as sports averages. So it shows that, again, these speech and debate teams' average is truly among the top percentage of the school. So with that being said, also it is imperative to know that those who participate in speech and debate have a 22 to 30% chance of getting into the top tier colleges. So this really being part of speech and debate increases students' abilities to get into top tier colleges. Now, if you are a president, like we do have in the back, Wesley Turner, that increases your percentage of getting into top tier colleges by 60%, according to a study. This is the older version.
Yeah.
We didn't look at it.
We have. Oh, okay.
That's okay. Just play it off here.
Yeah. So here is where we have traveled this season. And as you can see, we have actually traveled more out west than we have stayed in this general area. So we have gotten first place and second place at Mount Markham. We have gotten first place at Delaware Academy, first place at Albany Academy, and first place at Shen. And considering that we have only went to about 5 or 6 tournaments, we have a pretty good track record. And although should we talk about what we're asking for here?
Yes, we'll talk about that on another slide.
Okay.
Just hit it again. Awesome. Okay, so this is just the breakdown of a tournament per year, tournaments per year. So students per tournament we usually send about 20 students to the tournament. It's it's roughly $10 to $15. It's closer to the $15 range, and that adds up to about $252. Now, with that being said, we attend 10 tournaments per year, averaging around about $2,500 just for entrance fees for the team. Now, on the other side of things, as we said, we travel out west quite frequently. We actually travel, the average tournament is about 75 miles away. So if the average cost per gallon is $2.25, and again, we send 20 students, and we attend 10 tournaments per year, then that equates to $7,000, meaning that just for entrance fees and transportation, it costs about $9,500 in order to achieve going to these different tournaments throughout the year.
And on to the next slide.
Okay, just talk about the nationals then.
Yeah, because when we go to state and national tournaments, an important thing to remember is that for all of the costs for these, parents are paying out of pocket. So as we would show the math for the state and national tournaments, we send about 15 to 20 students to these. Although the cost goes up till, with the transportation and the rooming and the actual entrance fees for these more competitive higher level tournaments, it gets upwards of like $1,000. So
Per person.
yeah, per person. So then on another side, we would talk about how in all, the cost to go for the team to all the tournaments in the regular season, as well for out of pocket, as well as for the state and national tournaments, is upwards of $50,000.
So with that being said, we have come to the board tonight to ask and seek for some financial help. Because we have not had funding, unfortunately, for the past couple of years due to loss of our lovely advisors. They retired, and recently, Ms. Donluder and Ms. Freeman, we have two brilliant advisors this year who have rejoined the team. So we have come tonight to ask the board for $25,000. I know that is a very large number of money.
This would be allowing more students who are not or cannot afford to go to these higher level tournaments. That will give them the opportunity to embrace all that speech and debate has to offer.
Now, with that being said, with our district competitives, they range actually around from $20,000 to $30,000 each year that they get from the Board of Education to help them and guide them for state tournaments, national tournaments. And remember, we're the biggest school in our district, so we unfortunately have been working with our own money out of pocket, instead, and we are the only school in our district that does not receive compensation from the board.
And with this $25,000, we would use it for busing, so we could go to more tournaments out west. We would use it to fund those students that have qualified for these upper level tournaments but cannot go because of the financial situation. And we would also hope to use money hope to use money for a coach.
Absolutely.
Well.
And do remember, please, that we're also adding a middle school program next year. We're thinking about having more tournaments here. We're thinking about more travel next year. So this is really the closest way that we can step to excelling even farther than we have beyond what we have right now. Because truly, we know that you all are committed to excellence. And, of course, the speech and debate team knows that we are not just a team that is really just as successful as the teams out here in front of us today. But we are a team that has struggled in the past because we have had loss of fundraising and, of course, financial support. So that is why we are asking for such a high number today. Do you have any questions? Yes.
So I want to ask if you ask anybody else for money. It's a leading question because we have created in the district over on the outside but related, the Shenendehowa Educational Foundation. We provide grants, and this sounds to me, especially if you're looking at the expansion to the junior high program, we like to, on that board, look at programs where there aren't the total resources available within the district, or we're piloting something. So the middle school program may be something that you should be thinking about. We're on the Shen website. You can link in, see there's a very short application process, and talk to your advisors and think about that. If there's some distinct piece that you could ask for a request, we'd certainly consider it on the Education Foundation board.
Because it's a board that reinvests back into Shenendehowa. So everything that we get goes back into our educational opportunities for our students.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right?
Thank you very much. That was, again, demonstration of not only the club, but some of their skills. So how many kids would be brave enough to come to the board and say, hey, pony up 25 grand, will you? So appreciate it very much. Thank you very much. And we'll be following up with your respective advisors to plan this and talk this through as well. So thank you very much for that. At this point, I would like to ask Mr. Coleman to, actually before Chris, if you don't mind, one more delay. We have here some of our friends from Utica National. This will be relatively quick, right, Mrs. Carmen? As a school, this is almost akin to some of our sports team. When you're really good, you're just good, and you just being really good is just par for the course, is what we do. And so not only are we really good in terms of what you saw from our students from speech and debate, but you also hear from many of our winter sports team. But we're also very good as a school district in terms of our focus on safety, and this has been a major priority for us for the past several years. And you hear from Mrs. Carmen and representative from Utica National in a second here that we are very good at that as well. And I say that because oftentimes people take things for granted, thinking that great result is just showing up. But certainly for our student athletes, we know that great result is not just showing up, it's putting a lot of effort in up front. And so we have another special recognition again tonight from our friends at Utica Mutual, the Utica National, and then we'll go into Mr. Colin and the sports.
Good evening. Thank you very much. Just to give a real brief overview, as Dr. Robinson had said, each year we do safety walkthroughs of the school district and various departments and various programs that we have across the district. And Utica National has some very high standards that are set forth for us to achieve. And each year we achieve them and actually exceed, I think, a lot of the times, and you'll probably hear some of that. And it is with my honor that I would like to introduce John Fanaroli and John Laufer. John and John, I work with both of them very closely throughout this process, and thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you, Becky. Good evening, board members, Dr. Robinson, members of the district in attendance. I know you're all anxious to get this moving, so we will be brief. My name is John Fenaroli. I represent One Group Schenectady Insuring Agency. We're pleased to continue as your district's insurance agent broker. I want to thank Dr. Robinson for inviting us again to be back this year, and we are very pleased to announce that Shenendehowa Central School District has again, for the 6th consecutive year, achieved this recognition at the highest level made available from Utica National, which is titanium with honors, and for that we offer our thanks and congratulations. So that's well done, and I think a round of applause. It clearly demonstrates the district's commitment to establishing a mindset. You're clearly focused on maintaining a safe and efficient environment, permitting your students and employees to achieve at the highest level as well. Please accept my congratulations again this year. And just quickly, in addition to Becky, who certainly deserves recognition and thanks as really the facilitator of this effort, I also want to recognize Kathy Wetmore-Chase, Ken Patnod, Jill Bush, Jay Tortelot, and Al Karam from Transportation as well for their contributions and attention to detail throughout the year. It's about commitment and follow-through, and your district clearly demonstrates that year after year. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce my associate, John Laufer, the Senior Risk Management Consultant from Utica National Insurance. I'm the insurance agent. This is the insurance company. John, you're on.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here. You've likely heard the words, "It takes a village to raise a child." The saying is attributed to an African proverb that has been around for many years. And in 1996, First Lady of the United States, Hillary Rodham Clinton, published her book, It Takes a Village and Other Lessons Children Teach Us. In her book, she focuses on the impact individuals and groups outside the family have, for better or worse, on a child's well-being. Clinton notes in the book many institutions responsible in some way for raising children, including direct family, grandparents, neighbors, doctors, employers, faith communities, and local businesses. The Shenendehowa Central School District is an important part of the village for almost 10,000 children in surrounding communities and beyond. These children spend a significant amount of time here in the district, perhaps more than any other place. So what role does the staff at Shenendehowa play? What is your contribution? What are your expectations of these children in your village? At the elementary level, you expect practicing such things as respect, honesty, responsibility, and caring for others, and that they contribute positively to their community. As a middle school student, you expect them to demonstrate creativity and critically analyze issues and options to resolve a variety of situations, and to contribute positively to the larger community, and to exercise flexibility and willingness to interact with others to make necessary compromises to accomplish goals and tasks. As the children graduate the district, you expect full participation in a democratic society that is part of a global community, and children who value arts and humanities in their diverse forms and who respect creative expressions of interests, talents, and experiences. And all the while, as you help raise these children and contribute to their village, you are doing so in a safe and secure facility with safety and security policies and procedures in place to protect the children and yourselves. This healthy environment enables you to devote your time and attention directly to the children. Utica National, with our Safe School Excellence Award program, can only recognize a small fraction of the effort you put into the well-being and nurturing of the students at Shenendehowa. We have created these almost 200 questions based on our 40-plus years of experience in insurance, risk management, and claim handling. Shenendehowa Central School District has been awarded our highest level of award in each of the 6 years you participated in the self-assessment program. Since the program's introduction 14 years ago, we have handed out over 1,200 awards. Each and every school that participated in the program across New York State deserves our thanks and gratitude for trying so hard to provide a safe schoolhouse. It is my profound honor to present the Utica National Safe School Excellence Award at the titanium level with honors to the Shenendehowa Central School District. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mrs. Carmen. John and John, thank you very much. And so Mr. Coleman was looking at me oddly back there. Why did I have these guys go first? But there's a backstory to that. So Mr. Finaroli, nothing against him. He just made a poor choice in where he lives in Niskuna. We won't hold that against him. So we didn't want him to feel so bad when you hear all the highlights of our Shen athletes. So when you go back to Niskuna, make sure you go back and say, you know what, you went to a place that does it right, not only insurance-wise, but otherwise. But thank you very much. So Mr. Coleman will come forward and again showcase some of our winter sports teams, something we look forward to. And I think that in the future we may have to, no pressure on Mr. Coleman and all the coaches who are not here. We may have to have a bigger venue to get all the coaches and teams that are not here who will be here this time next year. So again, in advance, congratulations to all our student athletes, to our debate team members. All these things reflect what we think a community that's committed to excellence and want kids to bring out the genius in every student and to maximize their respective talents. And so I don't want people to miss that point in the midst of all the applause. It's truly about us as a system trying to give every student opportunity to shine in whatever venue they may so incline. So congratulations, and my thanks to all the coaches and the parents who helped to ensure that as a system we remain continue kicking this units behind for sure. So congratulations to all of you.
Thank you. Can I hear you back? Can I hear back there? Yeah, okay. I do want to thank Dr. Robinson, the Board of Education, for allowing us to come in every year to do this. And Mrs. Barra, I want to congratulate you on winning that award with the Team 20 Robotics. If you're around late at night on Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Fridays at Shenendehowa High School, generally, we always think the athletics group is the last group to leave the school, but Dr. Robinson, I know a lot of times we'll be pulling out of the parking lot and the robotics team will still be there and still be working. The two speech and debate people, I have a meeting with the Assistant Superintendent for Finance coming up about budget. I'm going to try to get you guys to come in with me maybe at some point. And Dr. Robinson said a number of years ago in 2007, 2008, when we had some real financial difficulties going on, I remember this moment very vividly, that one of the things that Dr. Robinson spoke about was, well, the athletic program has this, and this program has that, and this program has that, and everybody was kind of hunkering down in their position to preserve what was their part of the budget. And the one thing I always remember that Dr. Robinson said very candidly to all administrators was, you're either for extracurricular activities or you're not. It didn't matter which ones they were. All that matters was this is for kids after school, and you're either for it or you're not. So we always appreciate your support on that. This winter, we had our 6-man game in the gym. We sold out the gym again. The games were on television against Saratoga. It was a great game. It was our second year of Unified Bowling. They had an exceptional time at Unified Bowling. We'll have the spring Unified Basketball team coming up. They'll be in the springtime. We had over 600 athletes participate in our winter program this year. That again is a number that's consistent with what we've had the last couple of years, a very high number for our school. And without further ado, I do want to get on to our championship teams. I know time is short here. Our first team is no stranger to being here. They haven't been here in a couple of years, but they're back again here today, and their coach told me they'll be back for a few more after this. Our boys swimming and diving team completed an outstanding season again this year. Undefeated, went down, won several championships. I think second in New York State, Coach Dunham? And we'll finish first in the final New York State rankings. Had an outstanding performance. Chuck Number on at the Section 2 championship, 500 points. Were you over? Over 500 points, which is an incredible accomplishment. Is Joey here? Joey Holman? Is Joey here? Where's Joey? Where's Joey? Joey was the... I'm going to bring him up. Joey was the most honored swimmer at sectionals. So without further ado, I'd like to bring up the boys swimming and diving team Section 2 champion, ranked number 1 in New York State. Come on up, everybody. Come on up, fellas. Work your way through. Good job, everybody. Good job. Good job. Good job.
Yeah, just stop about the end of the table.
Yes, it is. Good job, guys. Let Coach Dunham in. Good job. I'd like him to go right there. Yeah. Brian here. Let Coach Dunham in. Move down.
So thank you very much to the Board of Education, Dr. Robinson, Mr. Coleman. Thank you for your continued support of our program. We greatly appreciate it. I think I stood up here the last 2 years and said that we weren't going to come back empty-handed, so I'm very pleased that to be able to give you one of these once again. For our team as a whole, a couple different highlights. We had great senior leadership. Our 2 swimming captains were Joey Holman and Adam Kogan, who were recognized as merit scholars in the fall. Did an outstanding job leading the team, and our 2 senior divers, Ian Clinton and Eric Scanlon, did a great job of leading our diving program. And I want to thank Coach Hogan and Coach Mayan on our staff as well. the big thing that we really talked about is you're not really defined by your setbacks or your near misses or what you might deem as failures. You're really kind of defined by how you respond to those. And I couldn't be prouder and happier by the internal drive and motivation and teamwork that these individuals all showed together to try to get back up on top, because it can kind of go one of two ways when you come up a little bit short a couple years in a row. So I couldn't have been happier, couldn't have been prouder, and sometimes swimming and diving gets recognized as an individual sport, but it's really just like any other sport that everybody has a role to play. And this is one of the best teams that we've ever had here at Shenendehowa, is everybody understanding and knowing their role and swimming and diving and fulfilling their role to the best of their potential. So couldn't be happier, couldn't be prouder. It was an outstanding season, and hopefully we'll be back here again next year. Thank you.
Good job, guys.
I was hoping you were going to make the triple.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Great job, guys. Thanks for coming out tonight.
Did your homework.
Hey, Chris, can I ask you a question about
Yes.
swimming? So we take things for granted. So that pool building that we have over there, how much of a difference has that made in our program?
Chuck?
I certainly don't take that for
I don't think,
I live over there, so thanks for
you know, Mr.
Kelly.
Mr. Casey asked a question about the impact the pool has had 10 years later. It's phenomenal. We built a community program from the, Chuck and I had a vision of building a community program from the ground up that has a waiting list to get it.
came from practice.
They just came from practice, right. These kids, these student athletes obviously get the benefit of that pool. The generation before him, when Chuck was swimming, it was bus rides to Mechanicville and everywhere else, and they were successful then. But I think having that facility has just been tremendous in so many aspects. They won't allow us to move the sectionals anywhere else. We're kind of like forced to host it at Shen, which is a wonderful thing. So it has been great. The next team that I'd like to bring up, this team has fought long and hard for the type of recognition that they're now starting to receive. 2 years ago, the New York State Public High School Athletic Association, after about a 3 to 4 year period, finally approved cheerleading to be a recognized sport in New York State. And that was a great thing for our program. Lauren, our head coach, her and I have been together for a decade now, and one of the things she said, well, we're not really doing anything different. I said, yeah, but you're competing for sectional championships now. It's just it just kind of takes the program to another level. This year they took it to another level. They wound up being the Section 2 championship team. They went on to the New York State Championships, and they finished fourth at the New York State Championship. So if you think about it, in the large school division, I think across the state there were 300 and something schools competing in cheer at the large school divisions. Our team finished fourth. It's an incredible accomplishment. My son fell off the couch, in case anybody's wondering, and my wife is texting me. I think everything's okay. The cheerleading team has just been it's been a growth of a program for us over the last 10 years, and it has been a tremendous program. So I'd like to bring up the Section 2 championship competitive cheerleading team. Come on up. Good job. Thank you. Good job. Congrats. All right, we'll stop right here in the middle. Lauren?
Thank you to Dr. Robinson. I'm used to, thank you to the board, and thank you to the athletics department for your support and recognition of our success. I know we all greatly appreciate it. The kids, our scholar athletes, work very hard, and they deserve all the recognition they can get. And we look forward to coming back next year. So thank you.
Yeah. All right, guys.
I saw the girls compete 3 times this year, and it was incredible in terms of you go and watch them, how dedicated they are to these performances. It's incredible. Next up, we have our girls basketball team. Our girls basketball team finished 22-2. They repeated as Section 2 champions. They were regional champion. They were New York State semifinalist. What makes this team an accomplishment was last year they were here. They got beat by Ossining in the state championship game last year in a heartbreaking loss. They lost 10 players from their team from last year. And to get back to that same spot a year later speaks volumes about their dedication and the types of coaches we have within that program. So without further ado, our girls basketball program. Coach Murphy couldn't be here tonight. Coach Rubino is filling in for him.
Want to congratulate all the teams being honored tonight. It's quite impressive to see this room so filled. On behalf of Coach Murphy and all of our student athletes, I'd like to thank the board, Dr. Robinson, Mr. Cullinan, all the administrators, teachers, and students of Shen, and the Clifton Park community for all the support for our team this year. We couldn't have had the success we had without that. As Mr. Cullen said, we lost 11 people from last year's team. We only had 2 people return with varsity experience, and there were a lot of doubters out there. But the only people that didn't doubt our chances were ourselves. We all had faith in what we were doing, and here we are again. The girls were very unselfish. They bought into the team concept. They embraced their roles, which is difficult to do, but they did. They bought into it right from day one and cared about each other more than they cared about themselves. And that's a really, really good quality that they all had, and that really paved the way to our success. So I want to thank everyone.
Great job.
When they're back next year, they'll be a little bit taller and a year older. No pressure, though. Next up, we have is Coach Burnley here. Is Coach always way in the back? Okay, Coach Burnley, start working your way up here. Our Alpine ski program, which operates out of there. Coach Moran is with them as well. They operate at home base, not locally. They kind of up in West Mountain and ski up there. And you know, early in the year we didn't have a ton of snow. First, we would like to bring up the girls. The girls here. We got the girls Alpine ski team. We have a couple members of the girls Alpine ski team who won their 5th straight Section 2 championship. So members of the girls Alpine ski team, come on up.
Since the insurance people have left the building, I'm going to give you a little lowdown on what alpine ski racing is. Picture an ice skating rink, tipped at a 30-degree angle, with bumps and rolls and stuff in it. We go out and put sticks in the hill. Then you strap 6-foot boards to your feet, and you try to negotiate that course down the hill. That's alpine ski racing. At speeds in excess of 30 miles an hour. I'm glad those guys are gone. Anyway. Girls, fifth in a row. It was a very emotional year for me with these girls. They never finished better than 3rd in any race until the last race of the year, where they were 2nd, 1 point behind the winner. So Matt and I got them together. Gabby is not here tonight, unfortunately, and told them, you guys got a real good chance to repeat again. And at sectionals, they were 3rd after the giant slalom in the morning. After the first 30 girls ran, I decided to leave the start, and I got on the lift and was watching the live timing on my phone. It was tallying up the results. And I figured they won. And I almost cried on the lift that these girls came through and won for the 5th year in a row. Taya came out of nowhere and won the slalom at sectionals. She was tied for the overall top girl at sectionals with a fourth in the GS and a first in the slalom. So, congratulations, girls.
We're now going to add some boys. We're going to add our boys alpine ski team. So I see Patrick and Alex and Evan. Come on up. These are members of our boys alpine ski team. Just so you are aware, the boys alpine ski team, they won their first sectional championship this year. Evan Scriven was the New York State champion in alpine skiing. And the team also is New York State Public High School Class AA champion. They won the state championship this year, so an incredible accomplishment. And I do want to highlight, we're very fortunate at Shenendehowa. We have great student athletes, but we also have tremendous coaches. You guys don't realize how talented Rich and Matt are. They now have the privilege of having coached both the girls team and the boys team to the New York State Public High School Athletic Association Championship. That is not an easy accomplishment. So, boys alpine skiing, Rich Burnley.
All right, another little tidbit. At the state championship meet, the boys in slalom, Section 2 boys, were first through fourth, with two others in the top 10. The girls had first in the slalom, three or four more in the top 10. The boys and girls from Section 2 all won the state championship for the section. So for these guys to compete in the best section in the state and still win is a pretty amazing accomplishment. I'll throw some numbers at you. Evan, out of 9 races, he won 7 and finished second in the other 2. He's the section champ in slalom and GS. He won the slalom by almost 3.5 seconds. I know Lane had a little bobble, but he still won it by 3.5 seconds. He's the state GS champion. He went on to the Eastern High School Championships, won the GS, finished fourth in the slalom, was the overall winner at that event for the boys. The whole Eastern United States, that's from the Mississippi River east, okay? Quite an accomplishment. He was the Saratogian Skier of the Year, and I believe by the end of the week, you're going to be the Times Union Skier of the Year too, buddy. Good job. That was Kevin. Not to be outdone, Alex was third place in the slalom at New York State Championships. Great job, Alex. And not to leave out the junior member of the team, Pat Leonard, was voted the Section 2 Sportsmanship Award winner for the Sportsman of the Year by New York State.
Congratulations. Congrats, guys.
Great job, guys. Outstanding. Great
And
job.
Evan, Patrick, and Alex have been fitted for the state championship ring, so they're very excited. Those will be in soon. Next up, we have a team that was here last year. They have a number of athletes that performed incredibly well. Our boys track and field team, our boys indoor track and field team, under the guidance of Jason Burlingame and some of his talented assistant coaches, they repeated as Section 2 champions. There's a large number of them here, so come on up. Boys Section 2 championship, indoor track and field team. Stop right there. Girls?
Good evening. How are you? Good. We're doing great. These guys up here. They're excited to be able to repeat for this community this year. We want to thank all the community members, especially the runners in the community who support us. We have a large following on Twitter now and people that are alumni that continue to come back and just shower support on this program. And for the parents who make our program possible, both just by being supportive of their athletes in the program and by being members of our booster club, and for the Board of Education and Dr. Robinson and Mr. Coleman, who just have been, an incredible support to this program the last 2 years. So we're very blessed, and we're very young. This is a great group of guys. We had incredible senior leadership in an event, a sport where you have 16 events to cover. You really have to have a lot of talents and a lot of the field covered. We relied on extremely young guys this year. I think 70% of our points at sectionals came from sophomores, and it took senior leadership to convince those sophomores that they were capable of what we knew they were capable of, and to inspire greatness in them. So I'm really proud of our senior leadership in this program this year, and really excited for the future of this program with the young guys that are behind me here. So I'll add a quick little highlight list of little end of season things here for these guys. But we did repeat as sectional champions. Our patch winners this year, we had finalists in the pole vault and the weight throw with Joe Meliti and Dylan Blowers. We had runners up in the 55 meter with Matt McLaughlin, who's here on the side. Casey Gribben in the pole vault, who's practicing right now. Jake Pishkala in the long jump and triple jump, also practicing right now. And Dylan Blowers in the shot put. And as champions, we had Alex Matson, who's here in the 1,000. Nick Michalowski, who's in the 55 high hurdles. Josh Lacey, Alex Matson, Ethan Brunel, and Alex Hislop. One is a relay team in the 4x800 meter relay. And we had several guys qualify to go to the New York State meet and place 13th in the 1K, 5th in the intersectional relay, and Nick was runner-up in the 55 hurdles this year at the state meet, running the 11th fastest time in Section 2 history. So it was a good year for all these guys up here, and we look forward to a great spring as well. Thank you.
Interestingly enough, our track team that practiced outside for most of the winter has now been practicing indoors because of the snow, so that's kind of the irony. And then our final team, they're no strangers to being here. They, again, are also back-to-back champions. I think they've won 5 times in 8 years. Our girls' indoor track and field team had an incredible year this year. I think they set the highest point total in Section 2 history. At the Section 2 championships. The 4x8 team was state champions. Rob's got some numbers on that. Jill Shippey, I hope Jill's here. Yeah, there she is. Jill won 2 New York State championships in both the shot put and the pole vault. We had a Suburban Council leadership meeting with 300 of the best student athletes in Shenendehowa, and I was walking in, and Jill was walking in, and another girl from there goes, "There's Jill Shippey from Shenendehowa." I was like, "Oh, okay, that's good. You're in like Kevin Herter territory now, you know." And Jill actually went on to win the national championship in the way through, which is just a phenomenal accomplishment. So, Rob, bring girls track and field up. Girls track and field. Not through girls.
Okay. You've had a lot going on tonight, so I'd be remiss if I didn't read off just a few of the outcomes of the statistics of some of the girls up here. Team went undefeated, most points ever scored in Section 2 history by any gender, any level, or division. We had 9 girls compete at the state meet. 3 Section 2 records were set there. Hannah Reale in the 1,000, Jill in everything she does. And then the 4x8 relay ran the #1 time in the nation. They set the state meet record by 8 seconds, the section record by 10 seconds, and also the facility record. So that was our state meets. And then, like Chris said, at the nationals, we had 6 girls compete, 2 different relays, and then Jill winning a national title. Jill's weight throw on the very last throw of the competition, her 6th throw, is #2 all time in U.S. history. So. A lot of outcomes you've heard of all the extraordinary teams this season. Of course, at Shen all the time. What I think that boils down to us, what I'd like to tell you about is process. What can we teach? Why does that happen? Why does it happen for all these teams? We have something we call the process is the goal. I stole it from somebody else that does this job very well at another point, another part in New York State, and you don't show up to anything that means something that's with pressure or expectation without having done very little things very, very well. And these girls are up here because they've adopted the attention and the detail, and they've been able to do that consistently on a daily basis. And that's really incredible for young ladies to do that. It's a grind. A lot of it's mundane. Like Chris said, distance runners were outside. I shoveled the track like 8 times this year. The sprinters are stuck in the hallways. They're not really clean after school. We've got pole vaulters over at CODA practicing right now. We had throwers in a gym. It's just not ideal, but that's indoor track. It's a circus. On the back of our team shirt, there was a circus, picture of a circus. So that's what it was. But they adopted this idea of the process is the goal, and then also to go hand in hand with that, focusing on what you can control. And if you can do those things, then you see what happens here at the highest level. More importantly than process or any of our little mantras, these girls represent this community to the highest level. They're amazing young ladies. They really don't want me to come up here and talk about a lot of the accolades that they have because they really are very humble people. And it's just an amazing opportunity that I have. Jen, one of my former runners, Keith Jordan, Dennis Hogan, who helps us on the girls' side with the vault. Scott Dockett's one of the best throws coaches in the country. He's not able to be here, his wife's sick, but I wanted to make sure he got credit. He did such an amazing job with a large group. And then Mike Marino. And that's our coaching staff. They're amazing coaches. They allow me to do the little I know how to do in distance. And it was just a real fun season working with a great group of young ladies. So thank you very much.
And I apologize for taking up a lot of time. Unfortunately, we had a very successful winter. I want to congratulate all our student athletes and our coaches. And again, thank Dr. Robinson and the Board of Education.
I just want to say 3 things to you. The thing that strikes me, that's fine, not only about the students, but the passion of the coaches.
Oh, yeah.
And that comes from you.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that.
Him.
And from him. The speech and debate kids put up a statistic about grades.
Yeah.
I dare say if they compared Shen student athletes and scholar athletes, that statistic would be pretty different.
Yeah.
And if you don't go home soon, you're jeopardizing Father's Day.
Really?
You better go.
Yeah, I do. I'm sure they do. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it.
We'll just pause briefly and allow athletes to transition, and we'll continue on.
I hope your son's okay.
Yeah, I think he is.
All right.
It's impressive.
So again, thank you very much to the board for your indulgence. And we know that these meetings can be somewhat lengthy. However, I think this is what it's all about. Remind us that at the end of the day, your volunteerism, our hard work is to provide opportunities for our kids to be successful. And it showed that tonight in many different ways. And we could have thousands of kids here that are doing great things. And also, I said it last year and I want to say it again that, sometimes you hear people say, well, only certain groups come to the board. I have to remind folks that while we bring only some here, the board also go to other groups. And when we have hundreds of kids at various National Honor Societies, be it at the middle school level or at the high school level, we have board members present. That's a part of the board extending that recognition to those groups as well as other events. And so we certainly try to make sure that we want our students to know that as a governance and administration, we really appreciate their time and dedication, and to also acknowledge the tremendous work of our staff. So I want to say thank you to you as a board for supporting our endeavors and with our students. And speaking of endeavors, Mrs. Mala is going to provide a presentation overview somewhat of a new program, a special education program that we're looking to implement for 17-18. And so it was not initially on your schedule. However, I thought it was important for the board to hear about this program. Again, to speak to how we are constantly looking at and asking ourselves, are we best meeting the needs of our students, and what else can we do differently as we move forward? And this also cycles into our budget process. It's typically when we kind of open the ceiling, the roof, so to speak, and look down and ask ourselves, do we have the right capacity, the right programs, the right people, right places? And so this is just one dimension of change that we'll be making in special education. Michelle?
Good evening. I am grateful to be here tonight to present to you a new program that we are developing called the MOVE program. So the first slide that you see is an overview of our current structure of special education programs. You'll notice that on the left we have our least restrictive special education programs. We typically refer to them as special education services because those services, consultant teacher, resource room, and integrated co-teaching, are meant to support students who are receiving their instruction in the general education setting. Resource room often is a pullout, but it's not primary instruction. So it is not the initial instruction that students are receiving in English and math. It is supplemental support for those other instructions. Then the middle column, those are two of, I would say, our next level on the continuum, our BESD program for students with emotional and behavioral disorders, and our kindergarten skills development program, which is for our kindergarten students who have significant language-based disabilities and require a full-day program. So they are in the kindergarten room for half the day, and then they receive supplemental instruction for the other half of the day. Our students in the BESD program receive, at the younger levels, sometimes they receive some of their primary instruction in a smaller setting, but our goal for them is to be fully included as much as possible with more intensive supports pushing into the classroom and through the program. Then you'll see on the right side of the column, which is our more restrictive programming, we have Connections, which is for our some students with autism who are still working on a regular high school diploma. They receive some instruction in a special education setting and some instruction, the majority of their instruction in the general education setting. We have our functional skills development class. Students receive most of their instruction in the special education setting and are working towards the New York State alternate learning standards. Then we have BOCES, day treatment, residential, home and hospital instruction, which are very most restrictive. So that's just an overview to bring you back to the continuum, since you haven't seen me really since September. Now, we had a special education audit, and we are still in the process. Because we are so large, this is a little bit over 1 year process. And in the late spring, State Ed came in, they pull random records of students, they do full file reviews. Then in the fall, they came and observed students, observed programs, did interviews. And what they said at the end of the elementary, now that was just the elementary audit, we're finishing up the middle school, we'll start high school in May and June, and everything should be completed hopefully by next November. So it's almost an 18-month process because we're such a large district. What they said when they observed our elementary, they had some concerns with our functional skills classrooms because they saw that the students who were grouped in those classrooms had a very diverse needs, diverse learning needs, diverse program needs. Now, if you recall, I think some of you were here, I think it was about 6 years ago, we tried to start a MOVE program. And what happened was we just didn't have enough population to support it. So we then moved into this functional skills model, and we had the students who really required more of a habilitative program in those functional skills classrooms. Now I think we're at a point where we can really support a full MOVE program, and State Ed is saying it's time that you do this. In addition to that, at Shattuckon, where we have 2 functional skills development programs, we were hoping to start that MOVE program this year. The board approved an additional FTE. We tried to go through the interview process, and we just didn't find anyone in the middle of the year that we thought was really stellar and ready to take this on. So we have been able to continue to provide excellent programming for our students, but now as we move into the next school year, we are planning both with the space issue and also the program. And Shattuckon, as you know, is really topped out in terms of space and resources, speech, nursing, all of those resources that are involved in having another special education program. So that brings us to creating the MOVE program, which we plan on housing at Tasago, because that is currently the school with the lowest enrollment and is able to house the program and is very embracing of our Connections program. And I know that the principal who is here, Mr. Pace, is very excited. We've already toured the Balsam Spa program, which is a MOVE program that is really wonderful and well designed. So we're hoping to start moving with our planning for the facility. But what is MOVE? MOVE is Mobility Opportunities via Education. And it is a program, the concept of the program was started in the 1980s in California by a special education teacher. And it's designed for students who lack independent mobility. And the purpose of this program is to take students from where they are in terms of their limited mobility and increase their independence. We're talking about small gains, but we are talking about very meaningful gains for these students. The program is designed to have students out and into different pieces of equipment or on floor mats every 30 minutes. And again, this is for students with significant mobility issues and also developmental disabilities. And if you look through Part 200, this is the very small section that talks about students who need a habilitative program. So working on very basic skills and care. We will have occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech, music, vision, hearing, all of those therapies will be provided in the classroom. Students will, for the large part of the day, be receiving one-on-one stimulation and support for their physical needs, and they will be mainstreamed as much as possible into lunch, extracurriculars, mainstreamed into music, art, PE, and again, a big portion of their program is that stimulation piece, the sensory piece. It's a team approach to improve independence, and it's also activity-based. So a lot of working with sensory devices, assistive technology, and a lot of just interaction with adults and other students. You've probably heard the term reverse mainstreaming, where we have students coming into the classroom, they'll have buddies, so they'll really be incorporated into the school culture. So we're very excited. We will undergo training. MOVE is an international corporation, so we will contract with them to come in and train our staff and do regular updates. And as I said, we're very excited for this program. Yes, the age span of this program is actually kindergarten through 21. Because the needs of the students are so similar and their program needs are so highly specialized, this is one area that the state says this can be an ungraded classroom and you can have students throughout all of those age spans in one classroom.
And how many people are you thinking you're starting?
We're at this point looking at starting with 6 students, and the maximum would be 12.
Michelle, will we
Yes.
be working with MOVE International as well as looking at grant opportunities as well, not only at our budget, but I know that they have resources.
We
for
are
grants
always
and things
looking
like
at grant
that,
opportunities,
but
yes.
They have connections with that, and I
Yes.
just applaud Shenendehowa for moving with this MOVE, no pun intended.
Move
for
with the
this
move.
program. Years ago, I worked at a MOVE program at Center for Disability Services,
Yes.
and I can tell you, for the students, the perspective, the self-esteem, just for these kids too, especially for kids that may utilize wheelchairs, to be put into these to equipment in a prone position where they can interact with fellow students or with teachers. I'm just thinking going up to a whiteboard, interacting there instead of being at a lower level, eye-to-eye contact with folks, even if they do participate in some kind of physical therapy or gym-related or PE-related activities, what it does for their self-esteem, but also for their physical well-being too. Being at a sit-in position, like you said, different positioning is just so great for them. It's the most inspiring thing, and I hope as a board we'll get an opportunity once a classroom to see what's going on, because you'll never see anything like this. It's inspirational. So thank you for really pursuing that.
Yes.
Two questions. You've talked about their physical needs. What is the programming highly specialized for their intellectual development? So that's one question. And the other question is, are these students going to be, the flexibility that we have as a district in putting programs follows needs and so on, I can envision down the road that, their current housing situation may not be the best fit for that building in the future, and so this program could move, as we've had other programs move. And I wonder if this is the kind of a program where, because the students could be in it for so many years, and given their needs, is this the kind of a thing where we have to plan for it not to be flexibly placed within the district?
I would say that as we move forward with working on the facility, that would be our goal, because there are so many highly specialized pieces of equipment that are built in, and I'm not talking about chairs and standers. I'm talking about the counter heights and the sinks and just specialized structural things that I'm working with Mr. Pace, Ken Patnode on setting up and getting into place. So it probably wouldn't be a program we would want to relocate.
And also, another piece to that component too is that we want to create opportunities for those students to be in a part of a school environment. And I say that because the typical response to people, what was the typical response, particularly a student with disabilities, put them someplace else. And Michelle and I had this conversation. The parents of these kids love their kids and want their kids to have the same experience as any other parent, and these kids deserve the same experience. And so as much as we can try to do that, we'll certainly try to do that with the appropriate supports in the building. These programs are support intensive programs, and that's a big part of it. And also the leadership, the building leadership culture is also a big part of it as well. Because I don't know about you guys, I love my kids, you love your kids, your grandkids, and you want to know that as an organization, we care for those kids and deeply want them to have a quality experience. And so we try to do those kind of things. Even off-site programs are designed to take advantage of, again, those quality experience for those kids to go and work and things of that nature. Some of you probably familiar with our program that we have here where kids do more job site. So those are the kind of things that we have to take into consideration, the perspective of the student. And so a lot of thought has gone into it. And so we are looking forward to seeing this as Mrs. Rajat described, as something that inspirational, because we know we're doing the right things on behalf of students who, quite frankly, in many instances, people would think, why are you doing that?
Michelle, I just want to be clear, just so we're clear. You're going to Sago because it has space, correct?
Yes.
And we're working with the leadership. That's wonderful. And I just want to make sure you're talking about not expanding. We have the space, so we don't need to worry about space.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing, do you foresee, because we have this special ed program, like you said, it's more intensive, that students that may have been placed out of district because of those needs may be coming back?
Yes, we do have 2 students who are placed out of district that we've started conversations with the parent, and it may be another year because the parent may want to see the program once it's up and running, but yes, certainly we have 2 students, yes. Yes?
Real fast, just as a student, I was wondering, do you know how often those students will be given a chance to just come into a mainstream environment? Because I know, we love having those people, and they might be in a different set of circumstances, but we sure do appreciate them. So I was just curious, off the top of your head, do you know?
Certainly at the elementary level, we're looking at minimally cafeteria, recess, music, art, PE, any kind of assembly, school-wide assemblies, and then depending on the capabilities of the student, there's certain times within instruction that allows for group interaction, center-based. It's really an individualized plan for each student, and again, we want to get them in and out of equipment every 30 minutes, so that's a key component of the philosophy of the program. So we probably wouldn't have them push into a classroom for more than 30 minutes because we want them to be out of that chair and doing something outside of that one limited piece of equipment that they are often in throughout the day. So whether it's on the mat or in a stander, so that would be, our goal is, it's individual depending on the needs of the student.
Michelle, just
Yes.
follow up to Deanna's question. So how many teaching spaces, how many rooms will we be using in this program to start with?
Right now, we're starting with one classroom.
One classroom, okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And kudos to Mr. Pace. There's a degree of giving up something, to be quite frank with you. And so, I mean, I share it because the conversation hasn't been necessarily casual in passing. Let's do this, and let's do this here. It's kind of like looking at a situation, how do we relocate programs, how do we move things around, and then once we do some relocations and shuffling the decks, what can we sustain for a period of time, and not having every year we have to shuffle the deck because of the built-in infrastructure that we have to put in these spaces. Similarly, the same thing when we constructed Shattuckon, there's certain built-in infrastructure that we had in Shattuckon, and that's why certain programs are housed there because of the built-in infrastructure. I'm not saying that we couldn't do it anyplace else, but if you can minimize costs by doing it, why not try to minimize costs and provide provisions as well? So we're looking at those kind of things, and again, the leadership in the building is important because there is some degree of sacrifices being made that, okay, we once had this program here, but now we're going to have to combine space for this program or that program, those kind of things, and not just for the short term, but what can we do for the long term as we look to create this specific space for this program.
Two questions. Initially, you said that there weren't enough students to run the program. I'm assuming that we don't have a greater incidence within the relatively stable population, but perhaps we've brought people home from BOCES? Is that how we've gotten increased numbers?
I would say that we have not been placing students in BOCES as much, perhaps, as years in the past. It's such a small number of students. I don't think it's a greater incident. I think it's just that we're much more thoughtful about our placements, and we've had more capability to keep students in district.
And the second question had to do with the resources to support it. I would assume, despite the fact that it's located in Mr. Pace's building, that it is not his building's resources that are having to support it, that this is a district-wide resources brought in over and above.
So the special education teacher, the aides, additional speech support.
Yeah, you see some of that
Yes.
in the budget piece that we spoke about, and as well as some other existing capacity that we'll look to reshuffle to address not only this program needs, but we have clear other program needs that every year we have to see how, again, back to the model of service follow needs, that, just because we used it one way last year doesn't mean we're going to use it exactly the same way the coming year. So you'll see some of that, and that's where some of the added special education resources to not only address this, but some other special education areas that we look to expand and better meet the needs of students, specifically since we're talking about special education.
So could you just go back to the academic side of things? We talked a lot about the physical challenges that the students face, but just a real quick snapshot of what the academic.
So it's really pre-academic type of skills, such as basic communication, learning how to use switches and assistive technology to communicate, indicating that they recognize letters, shapes, numbers, but really pre-academic.
Michelle, with the assistive switches and all that, assistive devices, is that stuff that we as a district provide? I know some
Yes.
families have their
Yes,
own
we
at
do.
home as well for the individualized student.
We do.
Okay.
Yes, if a student needs it in order to learn, we provide it.
And then communication devices, again, would that be more personalized because with the families, or is that something?
Again, if the student needs it in order to have access to their education, then we provide it. Yep.
Thank you.
Great job, Michelle.
So I'm going to fill in a little bit for Mrs. Wetmore here. She's been out sick 2 days, and she came back tonight. Did she leave already? She's still here. And so she's fading fast, and she was afraid that she would get up here and have a coughing fit. So I'm going to pinch hit for her a little bit here on the budget piece of it. And a lot of it we have gone through already with the board, but certainly for our public, to some points slow down to highlight a little bit as well. So we're talking about the proposed 2017-18 budget, as you see here. And the referendum for the budget will have three components. The budget itself, bus resolution, which I'll touch bases briefly, as well as candidates for the Board of Education. The public hearing is on May 9th. However, the boards would have already adopted the budget. We already know the awkward piece of how the law dictates the adoption before the public hearing. And then the budget vote itself is on May 16th, right here in Guanadana Hall in the gymnasium. So we start with that piece of it. I won't walk through these in great details other than to highlight the fact that our budget is our way of actualizing our mission. And it couldn't have been more appropriate tonight to have several different groups of students here being presented, as well as even the program that Mrs. Mylod to show the full span of program provisions that we have here as a system in trying to meet the various needs of our students. So when we think about the budget process, that's ultimately our end result. How well are we doing it? Can we do it any better? And how do we create a value add sequence to the things? A very deliberate process we go through, as you know. More of it is behind the scenes conversations, planning, analyzing, and then we present to the board the highlights, the major program changes piece of it. As I mentioned last time we spoke, a significant portion of our budget is preserving the quality programs, and not necessarily adding programs, but preserving the quality programs, or even as, based on the question was asked tonight, we look at resources and see how we move resources or leverage or repurpose resources to better meet the existing as well as emerging needs. This program by Mr. Smiler's example of a need was there, we could have said, let's not do anything, but we know that it's something that we need to do differently in order to better meet the needs of those students. So it wasn't necessarily emerging, but it's certainly something, an added component that would be added to our continuum. The tax implication piece is for the past several years becomes that the bookends that we know the parameters in which we are working. So we look to look at a tax cap piece, which I'll talk about in a second, and then some cost-effective pieces that we try to address through the budget. So just to highlight these some areas that we really want to focus on this year. Every year we have to look at class size and section. And we go through a process where we go through many gyrations of class size and section and all the way, quite frankly, in some cases into August, because as people enroll and move around, particularly elementary level, that's what drives class size and sectioning. Intense focus on primary age education this year to really talk about some of the things that we're doing, reviewing some of our processes, enhancing some of those processes, rounding off some of those sharp edges in some of the programs. Continue to look at supports. The demands of students aren't getting any easier. And so, therefore, we have to continue to look at those supports. And so the provision of additional support isn't an indication of system failure. It's an indication of this system trying even harder to better meet the needs of our students as we move forward. Again, the program presented by Mrs. Mylod is an example of one of those things that better trying to better meet the needs of students. Technology rollout is one that we highlight last time. In fact, I came from a DIDIC meeting today. We have 2 board members who sit on the DIDIC committee. A lot of excitement around implementation of the one-to-one at the 6th grade and rolling it up to 7th and 8th. And quite frankly, as we speak, and simultaneously we're doing some rolling down, if you will, to elementary schools. So it's happening, and it's happening in a very strategic way. So it's not simply buying technology, but trying to change the mindset of end users with technology to apply it better to disrupt normal practices. Mental health is a continued focus for us, and unfortunately, this is a continued growing focus for us. So one of those areas that at some point this summer, we're going to really roll up our sleeves and ask ourselves the question, what else can we do? Because the end result impact is significant for some of our students. Be it the mental health issues or drug use issues, significant. We have to figure out a better way to better meet the needs of our kids. And so it's one of those areas that we're really going to roll up our sleeves this summer and ask and analyze the programs that goes with our wellness piece and all the other things that we're trying to do as well. So we really want to focus on that. And then the continued professionalization of our staff. The MOVE program, for example. we just don't want to roll something out and assume that people know what they're doing. We need to ensure that they know what they're doing and they can be effectively doing that piece of it. So constant focus on the professionalism of our staff, the board, the district investment, and our folks to hone their skills. So that's a big part of it as well. You know, we're in the process of negotiation now with 2 bargaining units, so those things have budget implication as we move forward. I mentioned last week the big unknown about health insurance. We have some estimation built in because, as you probably all read last week, there was a big attempt at the federal level that didn't manifest, and it's not speaking politics, but quite frankly with you, we're kind of pleased because from a cost implication, at least we have some for this week. Who knows what the next week will be on the health insurance piece. So we're watching that closely. So and the ERS TRS provided some flexibility, if you will, to offset the uncertainties of the health insurance. That's the irony to those two things as we move forward. TRS ERS is our retirement system cost as we move forward. So just going by the numbers a little bit, I'm not going to necessarily go through all the numbers, but just try to highlight a couple things for the board and certainly for the public that's here or might be listening otherwise. As you see here, the good, if you just do the math here, 34, 3, 35, a good portion of our budget is, as it should be, we are human-intensive people. We hire people. We have about 1,600 full-time equivalent individuals working in the school district. When you look at all the part-time, it's probably more like 2,200. So we have a lot of part-timers, particularly in some of the support areas. So we have a lot of people to do the job, and rightfully so, to do the job as we move forward. And so just some highlights that I just want to talk to the board about. When Mrs. Wetmore started doing the process, we started looking at the things that we know. What are the contractual pieces that we know that's going to have an impact out? And how do those things play out? What are some of the trends, some of the cost trends? So we look back multiple years and saying the trend is, this is trending up by X percentage. So we kind of make some educated guess in terms of what the projection will be for the following year. Then we start talking about some of the strategic pieces and give you, for example, on the instructional side. In the budget, we're looking at about 12.5 FTEs across all 3 levels of the school district. And while you look at that, say, well, the 401,000 is not going to cover. Well, on the other side of that is we have some retirements that's offsetting some of that piece as well. So we try to look at the net impact of those kind of things in terms of, again, leveraging resources to allow us to do something else. So the impact on the budget isn't the full effect of 12.5 FTE. It's the net impact that we try to figure out as we move forward through the process. Similarly with the administrative piece, we're looking at a CTE administrative piece that we mentioned last time, career technical education, kind of combining some areas to create a different set of dynamics in terms of programming. And again, some of that is offset by some other changes that we have in the administrative piece. So when you look at that number, you say, okay, that doesn't jive with what we think is going to cost. It's the net impact that you're seeing that's being demonstrated, particularly in the strategic line. And similarly, when you look at the non-instructional pieces, we have several clerical support positions in this piece of it. Again, looking at the net impact between some positions that's changing and what's the net impact on the budget. So I'm just going to stop there in case there are any questions on this particular slide. The next slide that we go into is the not so glamorous parts of the budget, but yet this the glue that ties all the pieces together. So we start talking about equipment. As you see here, a minimal increase in equipment because one of the things that we really try to do, a couple things, we really make sure that when we invest in equipment purchases, we want things that's going to last, to be quite frank with you. So we try not to, I think it was a furniture commercial that, it's like, why buy this from this commercial versus buy for us at a higher price? Because next year you'll be buying again from so-and-so, and I thought it was a cute commercial. And so that's the same kind of thing that we look at that. And to give an example, I was at a DIDIC meeting, and certain, again, 2 board members are there. They're in the process of testing out some new chairs. And nothing like testing out by having people use them. So we want to make sure that not only do they feel comfortable, but can they last? Because guess what? We probably won't be buying these again for the foreseeable future. So our equipment line have a tendency to stay flat because once we do for one thing, then next year we try to do for the next thing and try to have that recurring piece over the course of the years and not simply trying just to repurchase something that we just recently purchased from one year to the next. The contractual piece you see here, a lot of this increase is going towards our one-to-one initiative. and to a large degree, to expedite our one-to-one initiative. Because what we don't want to do is, okay, we're in sixth grade this year, and some kid is doing the math and thinking, my God, by the time they get to me, I'll be a sophomore in college. Well, we don't want that to be experienced. So whenever we have opportunities to expedite processes, and I want to clarify, we're not just rushing just to be able to do it, but we want to be able to have the capacity so as we get people on board and get the kind of cultivate the soil, we could continue the process faster than slower. So we're in the process now of working very closely with IMS, Ken McDermott, and Dr. Wood, and particularly those two, and collaborating on the instructional side of it. And again, kudos, for example, the middle school folks on Friday as a part of Superintendent's Conference Day. Big portion of their day was talking about how do they roll out 6 to 7 to 8 and make sure that it's a seamless process and learn from the examples of this past year in sixth grade. So there's a lot of behind-the-scenes plan development stuff that's taking place, and this provides us the financial capacity, so when we're ready to do it, we have the capacity to effectively roll out that piece of it. So that's a large portion of it. The textbook piece, as Mrs. Whitmore pointed out last year, the textbook is a little bit more formula-based. The state has a formula, and we run the formulas, and this is our reimbursement allotment, so to speak. And so we want to make sure we maximize our textbook. Over the last several years, the state has allowed us to use what typically have been paper to purchase software and things which make sense because, quite frankly, that's where schools are going. So we've been trying to really maximize that. Dr. Wood has a pretty extensive 5-year textbook plan, which is becoming more and more less textbook and more digital oriented, which is what we want. I can't wait till we actually have a digital, no pressure on Dr. Wood, of course, to get to that point, because I think that's where we're going in society, so we want to maximize those revenues. So that line stays flat because we just simply want to maximize the state reimbursement piece of it as well. And then we make some adjustments in BOCES. We always look at BOCES provisions and programs, and in some cases it's cost adjustment. Some cases is bringing certain programs back that we could, quite frankly, to do even more effectively and cheaper in-house. So we're making some of those adjustments. And each year we buy a litany of services, as you can see here, $5.2 million. It's a lot of stuff that's being purchased. So we literally go through this, ask ourselves, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing those kind of things? And also sometimes numbers change for kids who are enrolled in certain programs, and so that impacts our bottom line as well. So that's one of those areas that we constantly look at, and we know that we have to always be a couple of years ahead because the BOCES, they're also planning their budget. And so we can't have dramatic swings because, quite frankly, what might save us could be costly down the road because of the impact on program delivery otherwise. So it's one of those things that we're always a couple years out thinking about BOCES programs and how we bring programs in-house, or what do we contract with BOCES otherwise. So again, I'll stop here if there are questions.
Just a quick question with equipment, being that we're just talking about move and the move equipment. Is that included in there? And as well, do we know how much equipment
at this point, Christina, I would say largely, we haven't formalized those costs yet. Okay. We will. And part of that between the budget here, between some special education funding, I don't want to say believe to sound too informal word, but there's a capacity to do those kind of things. And there's a lot of detail still to work this process out. So the answer, short answer, yes, but it's not all here in this one particular line. And one of the things, too, we also look at, and maybe Mrs. Whitmore is looking as well, but typically in May, what I call the moratorium on spending, it's not really moratorium on spending, but we try to say, okay, at this point, if you're buying something, do you really need it in May, and what you're really going to do with it? Because we just don't want people buying stuff just because. And so we then started looking at next year's needs and say, what are some of the things we try to address in this year's budget moving forward? And so this is what we call start squeezing the budget. And when we get into the spring, because people get excited in the spring, and all of a sudden they think they should spend, and we're like, no, this is not just should spend, this is where we should really think about it, because we have other needs coming down the pike, and how do we try to spread those costs over, if we can, as much as we can across 2 budget years. So does that make some sense? And this is one of those things once we got to get into the detail. And that's also part of the reason why I had Mrs. Smilar do the presentation here to the board, because it also triggers a whole bunch of other processes internally, in terms of, okay, now we've gone through this piece, now let's all get all the details unfold, because this program is something that's going to happen, and let's work through all those details as well.
A question on text, especially. I think it was 5 years ago, we did Go Math, 4 years ago, Journeys. Are we contemplating any of those kind of big buys?
Yes. And we'll bring back, I'm not going to commit to when, but we'll come back to the board with that. That's where, now remember I said that we've gone from only book-related stuff, now we have in the sequence those type things, because those buys had expiration dates, so to speak, on them. So the journeys, or even here in the middle school, we went to Discovery Tech Books, and there's a time frame on it. So that's a part of our 5-year spending plan to say, how do those things fall into the sequence, and being diligent by maximizing this. And this is one of those areas that we definitely try to bridge the gap between the years to take advantage of the reimbursement opportunities from the state, and the timeliness of our needs. So at some point we'll circle back with you in terms of when some of those big purchases will expire and what's our plan moving forward with those. Yeah.
The comment you made about not needing to buy something at the end of the year, it suddenly struck me. Oftentimes there's use it or lose it mentality. If it's in your budget and you don't spend it, you're afraid you're not going to see it again next year. Well, that really counteracts that proposition. I can remember, having a budget to work from for a certain number of purchases and so forth, and hadn't really used it. Oh, we better spend it now, otherwise we won't get it next year. So if it really was spent not because of an absolute need, but just
because
the category was preserved.
And that's where our processes have been helpful, because people know that we're going to have honest deliberations about what we need, and so people don't have to think that, okay, they won't come back to me again to ask, versus the process is, we call them the B forms, and now they're all on Google. People submit, and we ask people to prioritize from high priority to okay, nice if I can get, and justify why this is a high priority, because quite frankly, we put onus back on the end users, because if you're going to say something is a high priority and we make the investment, there should be a clear gain or added value from that investment, and not having a situation we spend money and we walk into an environment saying, okay, I have no idea how this is being used. And that's why, even back to Mr. Casey's question about the rollout of the instruction material, we spend a lot of time with a lot of folks to say, if we're going to purchase it, there are some non-negotiables in terms of utilization, because it's a significant investment that we're making, and we want to make sure that people realize that and execute accordingly. So I think because that relationship now and that dynamics now is cemented, people know that the process, and ironically, you sort of heard the coach talking about process, that the process proves out, and so people have greater confidence in the end result, and knowing that the process will prove out. And so we try to maximize revenues as much as we can. We literally, any way that we can do it within the confines of the spirit and intent of the law, we try to maximize those revenues by paying attention to the details. The last slide here is a slide that ironically has a lot of big numbers on it, but a couple of, actually, let me back up. No, it's right here. So I want to point out the benefit ones, because this is one of those where we're talking about health insurance projected increase about $1.8 million. And you're looking at the benefit line, and you're seeing our contractual about $340 and this additional $295. You're saying, well, a lot of that is because the benefit of the offset of the TRS piece of it. And so here again, and I mentioned last time that if we had the unfortunate reality of pension costs rising at the same time insurance was rising, we'd be having a totally different conversation. And on the same note, if we were financially foolish to say, oh yeah, let's cut this. Well, what are you going to do the next time this hit the sequence? And so our entire objective is to try to have a kind of a flatline approach to budgeting. So from one year to the next, the impact is very predictable, because we understand that the impact needs to be predictable for our taxpayers, and it's very predictable because then, we can, back to Mr. Delillo's question, we could have people bank on, okay, Yeah, we'll have the gradual incremental growth in our pieces and not having, oh, it's a good year, it's a bad year, it's a good year, it's a bad year. And that's when people get into a hardened mentality because they don't know when the next bad year is going to come versus try to have a steady approach to things, and so it become much more predictable to the end users. One piece I want to highlight again here, this 275, and because this coincide with our capital plan that we shared last year, trying to have a cycle of referendums on the table that have minimal to no impact on the budget, which then translate to minimal or no impact on taxpayers. Because as debt mature, we try to backfill, so to speak, to again keep that very, very flat progression. And we see our debt service line going to go down by about 275,000. And we anticipate that even when we start accumulating debt for the projects that we're still waiting to get approved, that line will still be very flat because we have other debts that's going to be rolling off the table in 18, 19. And so at some point next year, we'll come back to the board with that piece of it so you can see it, because this 18, 19, probably in 2018 is where we're going to start talking about planning for the next referendum, because it takes about a year to plan for the referendum sequence of it, and to make sure, again, whatever we bring on board creates a negative, zero to negative impact on taxpayers. So that's what I really want to point that line out, the 275 reduction in our debt service piece. Before I transition, any questions on this page? I know Mr. Casey asked last time about the one bottom line, assuming that's you. Okay. So kind of put this whole thing in the financial side in perspective. We're talking about a budget proposal of 2.19%, and to further put in perspective to you, the tax cap calculation, the tax cap right here in this red column here, the tax cap calculation would have translated to a budget expenditure increase capacity of about 2.6%. So the official point, we're below the tax cap. And so certainly that'll be the headline in community news on Friday. Shen is below the tax cap. And so that's a point of note that we do that. And we don't necessarily do it to say, because last year, because the tax cap was so low, we were butting up against the tax cap because we had no choice. And so I say that because we don't necessarily look at the tax, let's play with it. We really look at what are the needs we have, and try to come to those conclusions. So this gives you some perspective of this is last year's budget 2.1. This is where the tax capacity is 2.6, and we're at 2.19. So relatively comparable adjustment to the past year. I want to go to one other slide to put things in perspective a little bit more, because this kind of gives you that 5-year glimpse. And if you remember this year, 12, 13, is when the year prior to that we heard about all this great conversation about tax cap at the state level and uncertainties between that. So we want to make sure that we had a solid base, and which is a great move for us, because I think it positions the school district in a place where we can now have that very smooth transition from one year to the next with our budget sequence. So if you see the budget, the average is right around 2%, 2.05, and typically that's this kind of sweet spot we're trying to end up with our budget sequence. Clearly, the revenue side is always so this is the expenditure budget. So this is what the board approves. The board approves expenditure budget. The board doesn't approve revenue, and that's a technical point, but it's a point worth noting, because when I get into the revenue side, there's a couple of things I want to share, that the dynamics that, quite frankly, we don't know. But on the same note, because we don't know certain things, we need to have confidence. And I guess the question I'd be asking the board on the April 11th meeting, I think is when the approval is, the confidence to adopt the expenditure budget as we move forward. So they give you that little perspective on the budget itself. On the revenue side, this is where things are a little bit interesting for us, and because our two largest sources of revenues are property taxes and state aid. And if you look at the sequence here, and the budget from 16-17 was 116 million in property taxes and about 45.9 million in state aid. And this year we're about 119 and 46 in state aid. So if you look at the proportionality, 70.26, 70.16. So you see also very proportional in terms of those things are typically that way, because, and not to belabor this point, once upon a time, we used to have, and I'm just going to go to this next slide here for a second. Once upon a time, we used to have this great line called interest income. And believe it or not, to put things in perspective, when I started at Shen, the interest income line was well over $1 million. And look at this interest, oops, it's not even there anymore. And look at this interest income line at 13,000. So you're talking about dramatic shifts because the investment vehicles just simply not there. You know, we're getting pennies if anything. And so all of a sudden that whole dynamic has changed and forced schools to think about revenue streams a lot differently than not. And so that's one of those areas that I really want to point that piece out. We continue to make appropriations for fund balance, and you see the numbers are very similar for the recommendation from one year to the next, based upon, if you recall, when we did the mid-year and the mid-year forecast and some of the kind of things, we're based upon those estimates that we could continue the same reappropriation of fund balance towards the supporting the tax base. And so basically what these funds here do is mitigate the tax impact, if you really think about it. So it's the offset mechanism mitigating the tax impact as we move forward. The piece that I want to go back to this piece of it, the state aid numbers. The state aid numbers that you see here is based upon the executive budget, the governor's budget. And we deliberately, and I mentioned the Friday bulletin, deliberately try to hold off until yesterday to see if we're going to hear in the news. The unfortunate news that I heard from, and some of you may have even read it today, is that the governor is now seeking an extender, which is basically he has major uncertainties about the federal budget, which impacts the state budget. And so therefore to come out with a complete budget, which I read that, I'm thinking, oh boy, here we go again. Because every time the state's delayed, it creates more uncertainty to us. Even though the board has adopted an expenditure budget, people want to know what's the tax implication. And right now, what we're proposing is based upon the last information we have, which is the governor's budget. We heard that both the Senate and the Assembly in their budget, one House budget proposal, had more money for foundation aid than the governor's, but how does that translate to Shen? I don't know. Will it continue to be the case if things go south, so to speak, on the federal level? I don't know. So I'm saying it to the board that we've been very fortunate for the past 6 years that we've had an on-time budget. But if we recall some years prior to the last 6 years, we were sitting here clueless about what state aid is going to be about, and crossing our fingers that what we hear in July or August is positive or consistent with what we're proposing. So I hope that it's not going to be extended that long, but right now I don't have any more news to share on that piece of it. So what our calculations are based upon in what's in the governor's budget, if we get additional funds, those funds will, quite frankly, go to offset or minimize the tax impact. Because we don't anticipate increasing our expenditure side of the budget anymore. So whatever revenues we come in additionally will be offset of the tax implication. So the tax picture, if you want to say this is a worst case scenario unless the state absolutely goes south in some of their projections. Does that make some sense? So it's an important point. So we're watching that, and I think the 30 hours maybe is now down to 22 hours for the budget bill to, what's that term that Mr. Casey used to be in the state?
They have a 3-day waiting.
Yeah, waiting period, and so before the April 1, and so we're watching and see how the dynamics are going to turn out and what's going to happen April 1st, if anything happens April 1st or not. But right now, that's the best estimate we're using for the revenue side of the equation. And just to kind of put this in further perspective, just want to fall through some other stuff. So this is the foundation aid piece we're talking about here. We have some BOCES aid. This is how the aid breakout. This is the breakout of that $45 million. The larger portion of it is foundation aid. The rest, all these other aid categories are what we call expenditure-driven aid. In other words, what we spend in one year, we get reimbursed on in the next year. And so this is always a piece that sometimes you see in the newspaper. Oh, Shen got 6% increase in aid. Well, actually, no, it's because we actually spent a little bit more. We're getting reimbursed a little bit more. The line that we all have to watch is this foundation aid line. And this is a line, quite frankly, we're hoping to see a sizable uptick in that. And if there's a sizable uptick in foundation aid, that would offset the impact on the tax levy piece. Does that make sense? And so you see other aid categories: building aid, transportation aid, excess cost aid. Excess cost aid is special education programs that are at a certain price point, dollar point that falls into that category. And then our instruction materials aid is our textbook library aid, things of that nature. So those are all reimbursement aid that we have to go through a pretty extensive process to document to ensure that we're maximizing our aid categories as we move forward. You see the building aid is projected to go down because our debt service is going down. So there's an offset to the other side too that we always have to balance. And so that's why when we plan capital projects out, not only is debt maturing, we got to make sure how do we create a situation that we're not on the other side creating a structural deficit by being too diligent in having debt mature faster than we backfill with some of these things, because the state aid typically for a construction project is spread out over a 20-year period. So we have to plan that sequence out as well in terms of when debt's maturing and when the aid reimbursements stop for certain projects.
Can you go back to the previous slide? I asked a question before, I'm still confused, on the issue of fund balance. So, or fund balance and the reserve accounts. So is what we do, we're not budgeting any money to go to any of our reserve accounts.
Here, and so this is on the revenue side. So from our...
Okay, understand.
Okay.
But here's my question. So how does money, I think I'm right on this, but I want to make sure I'm right.
Okay.
Does money that moves to the reserve accounts, does that come from the balance at the end of the year?
Yes,
The
so
unexpended balance?
So some
Versus
point,
budgeting for.
so some point in August, after we go through the audit process, and we finally know what's real on the expenditures and the revenue. So based upon audited information, we'll come back to the board and we'll outline all I think we have maybe 4 or 5 different reserves. And so we look at those reserves. Take, for instance, tax certiorari reserve. There's a point during the year that we probably every day get 10, 15 different tax certiorari claims. And so we go through the process of sifting through what we call those claims that seem like people just file every year versus the one that are legitimate. And so we go through that piece of it, reviewed by legal counsel and also reviewed by auditors. Example. And they come up with what they think are legitimate potential claims that could transpire. And so then we look at the reserve and say, okay, how do we have reserve capacity to potentially deal with those claims? And so that's how we kind of look at all the reserves. Because we want to make sure that what we're reserving for are legitimate liabilities and not just frivolous liabilities, to using that term. And so in August, so as a part of the audit process, that's also looking at those things. And then so we come back with a recommendation to the board to say, okay, our fund balance from 16-17 was X, and our projected fund balance, well, if you back up, for 15-16 was X, our fund balance from 16-17 was Y, and the net impact is this, and how much can we or should we transfer to those reserves. There are years where we have enough in that reserve to cover what we think the potential liabilities are, so there's no recommendation. There are years where we don't have the necessary reserve capacity to even make the recommendation. So that process will unfold in August when we have actually audited numbers, when we actually know what our revenues from our expenditures from the prior years were and what our revenues from the prior years were. And so we're working with real numbers and not estimated numbers. And we go through that process to the board. And also that's the same time where we finalize our tax levy. And so that's around the same August meeting where we do all those kind of things based upon real numbers. So we don't budget for reserves. We look at, and I call the process when we try to squeeze the budget, and I use a moratorium example, that in May we start saying, okay guys, let's talk about what's real, what's not real. And so in essence, through that type of diligence is how we create, you want to say, reserve capacity. And as our budgets are budgeted tighter, it becomes, quite frankly with you, harder to squeeze that capacity out of the sequence. And so, but we know while it's not a planned function of the budget, it's a necessary function of the budget. And we have been pretty fortunate that over the years we have, an example of that is right here where we're making, we'll be making contributions from our retirement reserve. So this is for our employee retirement system. The state comptroller, that reserve capacity was on the books for a number of years before we even started contributing to it, because we just didn't have the capacity. And so we, over a little time, started contributing to it, and as employee retirement system rates started going up, we started using this now, dropping it back into the revenue stream, a portion of it, to offset that piece of it. So right now, quite frankly, in many cases, this is, we don't have the increase, so it's offsetting, if you will, what the typical costs were versus the adjustment costs, because those rates are actually going down. So that's where the reserve capacity comes in. So we won't have any real numbers that we can bank on, so to speak, to share with the board until July, August, whenever that budget process, the audit process is complete.
So we will, April 11th, we will adopt an expenditure budget. On the revenue side, as it relates to these reserve accounts, that's what I'm getting at. If we want to use funds from a reserve account, we're doing it here. We show it here. Do we approve that? Do we as a board? I mean, do we approve the revenue side?
No, so what the board approved is the contribution to those reserves in August.
Okay.
Yes, you would go through that whole process.
Okay.
Yes. And then we expend from it. For instance, unemployment reserve. We expend based upon cases, or tax surcharge is probably the easiest one. So when and we don't necessarily bring all the tax surcharge claims to the board, but you've known in the past we've had Dave Rowley come in and talk to some of those big cases that's going to be $100,000 or more kind of thing, and so we're not budgeting for those. That's where we make those payments from the reserve. And so in other words, we're separating the direct taxpayer, what we're asking for to support instructional related type things from some of these reserves. Because I used the example before when I was at Mahonison, GE filed a huge tax surcharge that Shamont had to borrow money that year because the judge ruled that they had to pay that year, and they had to cut programs and services. And I vowed never, ever would I ever be in a situation that, it wasn't my situation, by the way, but that we're telling kids we're cutting services because we have to pay for a tax surcharge claim. And that's why we've been very diligent about making sure our reserve capacity is reflective of what we think would be legitimate claims.
So if we want to, I want to just keep going with this. So we have a capital reserve fund.
Yes.
There's $1.5 million in it, I think, the last I saw. So if at some point we had an emergency, a boiler, giant boiler went out or something, and we hadn't budgeted for it, do you come back to the board and say, this is our recommendation, let's go into the capital reserve account to fund this, or does it take being part of a regular budget process?
So we have an expenditure line here.
Yep.
That deal with those. And so say if the say was out more than this.
Yeah.
At that point, so the capital reserve one is a very particular one, because the referendum to establish it defines, and we tried to, when we approved it last year, the public approved it broad enough, but the public also would have to approve to expend out of that capital reserve. And so the capital reserve one is very limited in how you contribute, as well as how you access it. So we formulated and presented the capital reserve to align with our capital plan for capital projects. So if we have a major catastrophe, there's a whole process we have to go through, not only board process to go through the state process, and so it's not just simply as coming to the board, hey, we need a whatever. It's a whole process that we'd have to go through, which could mean going into under the emergency situation, that if it falls outside of the scope of that definition, which more likely we probably have to have some emergency referendum of, again, I'm off the cuff,
Yeah.
based upon the situation. Because the capital reserve one is very specific, very, very specific in terms of how you access those funds. And that's why a lot of people don't do it, because it's so specific and requires the referendum to establish, the referendum to contribute, referendum to use. So that's a very specific one. And we hope that as we contribute to that, that contribution will align with what we see offsetting what we call a local impact of a capital project, because if we're getting reimbursed 62 cents on every dollar, what's the local impact? And so we try to have the capital reserve try to offset or at least cushion the local impact on those things. I mean, does that make some sense?
It does. I'm asking the question because of this public discussion about Half Moon. And do we have the ability, if a developer came to us and said, I've got 20 acres and there's $700,000, could we use that capital reserve fund for that? And do we need voter approval?
The answer to that is no, based upon how that capital reserve was.
The definition of the capital reserve fund?
Yeah, because, and again, let me qualify that. I'm thinking, because I don't have it in front of me, but we have to go back and look at the language of that reserve. Let me answer it that way for you.
Yep. Okay.
Does it make sense? Because I don't have the language in front of me.
It does, but I think we're giving conflicting information. I mean, I don't mean this, but in terms of definition, because we talked about selling property for whatever the price is, and I thought part of what we told people is that we would take that money and we put it in a capital reserve fund.
No, we do put it in a reserve fund.
In a reserve fund.
That's right.
versus a
It's not a capital.
Okay.
Capital reserve is a very technical. If you look in education law under the section for the reserves, most reserves is board discretion based upon validation by, and that's why we use our auditors to validate. Because if someone ever want to come back and say, hey, what's the justification you guys have for the reserve? We can say, okay, here's the justification. In fact, all you have to go in Kathy's office and you can see piles and piles of tax certiorari cases, and you can choose whichever ones you want to choose from. Or if you look at unemployment, those kind of things, we have track records of unemployment payouts and those kind of things. Capital reserve one, again, reason why a lot of places, unless you have a defined capital referendum plan, it's not, I wouldn't recommend that people just create a capital reserve because it's so exact. And we define that exactly to look at the scope of construction of or upgrading the facilities and not necessarily some of the other things. But that's one of those things, again, certainly I can share the language of that so people can have that language because that was a part of the referendum piece. But it's a very exacting one.
And the purpose of having those specific kind of requirements is that, one, if you don't, the auditors are going to come after you and say, you're salting money away above your 4%.
That's correct.
Right? Is that, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it's about making sure that there's a legitimate reason for it. I mean, because bottom line is, it's also taxpayers saying, well, give me my money back. Well, okay, we can, but we're still going to have to pay for these things.
Yeah.
So the question is, I don't want to sound callous, pay now or pay a hell of a lot later in some of these situations. And so that's the reality that, so we try to be shrewd, if you will, in thinking those things through and creating a health capacity. So let me give the other side to that coin too, because when we look at our bond rating, our borrowing piece of it, we have a very high bond rating, and the reason why we have a very high bond rating is because we have a very solid reserve capacity. Because when companies are looking so when we talk about reduction in debt, and you guys, excuse me, informality, as a board, we went through the process of refinancing a couple years ago, and we got great rates. In fact, it was a steal to borrow money and refinance debt because our bond rating was so high. It's kind of like someone with a high credit score walking in to borrow money. You get it at 1.5. Someone with a lousy credit score walking in, they're getting at 12.9. And so that also impacts everything. And so we try to keep that balance of figuring out how one thing allows us greater capacity to do other things. And those things are typically big cost items, such as a $20 million project or something. So that adds up very quickly by having a solid fiscal health. And you hear it each August, or actually October, when the auditors come in, we talk about those kind of things. And that's a huge bond rating. And that's something we've been trying to do kind of focused on quite a bit because that helps our borrowing capacity on the other side, especially when we're not getting any interest income.
I was going to say, it's a balance
Yeah.
on our interest drops, but our interest cost drops as
Exactly.
well,
And
right?
so we're trying to balance those two things. No, thank you. So the last piece I want to just to highlight here is to kind of put the whole budget in perspective in relationship to the tax cap piece. Last year, we were about $43,000. That's the tax cap was extremely tight last year. And if you recall, last year, most of the money was on preserving programs. We didn't do a lot of, and so this year, we're about $680,000 less than the tax cap, which translates to about 5.8%. And so, some people may wonder, hey, Robinson, you're being foolish. Why don't you maximize the tax cap? But, one of the things that we try to have is honest deliberations about what we do, what we present to the budget, how we use money, and not just use it just because we can, because that's not wise neither. And the tax cap is a benchmark out there. It's more importantly, what's the larger public feel about the quality of our provisions and the quality budget they represent, and more so than anything else. But it's just one of those indicators that because it's a public thing, that people talk about all the tax cap piece, so I just want to highlight that piece to you as a board. And so the referendums that we have is this. Right now, the tax levy is an estimate because we have no idea what the final state aid piece is going to look like. And so this whole box up here we anticipate will change. The transportation costs we're looking at, as Mr. Karam presented last time, 22 vehicles and the board seats that are up for re-election as well. So this is the day that we're all looking forward to, the May 16th vote. And certainly I welcome any other questions from the board. Our goal will be to adopt the budget on the 11th, the September 11th, April 11th board meeting.
Dr. Rouse, as I'm sitting here, I think I'm getting the flu, so I'm going to make this brief. I just have a question for you. Help me out, and I know you'll be straight with me, because I just want to be sure. I read something today, and it caused me to pause, and I just want to make sure. When we heard from Dr. Wood about kindergarten, we are just starting to explore that, correct? We have
That's
not
correct.
taken any action. Thank you. And regarding buying land, we are not in any negotiation to buy land of any sort, right? That's out there. We don't have crystal balls. We don't know what's going to happen, correct?
There's no negotiation going on.
Thank you very much.
It's too easy. Thank you. So again, the budget information we'll start to, and even though the board hasn't adopted, we have a meeting with the Rotary, the 12 o'clock Rotary. There's two of them, the Sunrise and the 12 o'clock on Thursday, which we just provide overview, but we clearly qualify that this budget hasn't even been adopted by the board yet. But just to give some flavor, just how the timing of some of their meetings work, and it's been a group that over the years have had a pretty large turnout of folks to come and listen to us, so we wanted to make sure we take advantage of the audience. And then you have the roadshow schedule, which between myself and Mrs. Chase, we'll start hitting a lot of those meetings, some independently, hitting the beginning of certain things and the end of certain things, just because how the nature of schedules fall out. We'll try to communicate as much as possible. On the agenda tonight is the 45-day notice, and the 45-day notice is only about this proposed expenditure piece, because we have to put it out there that there's the intent to expend X, Y, Z, and it's kind of an awkward notice because some of the details that people kind of want we can't give, nor does the law require us to give at this point. And so as things get refined at the state level from the revenue piece of it, and if we have to make updates, clearly we'll make the updates, and ideally, if the updates, we'll be ready with those updates the next time we come back on April 11th. Okay?
Deadline for submitting board petitions, the 15th?
The board petition,
17.
whatever that Friday is, Mr. Dill, I didn't have the date in front of me. April 17th. So any questions from, and also even from the public, if there are questions from the public, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Okay, hearing none, I have my seat. Thank you.
We have our action item. To adopt the language. Do you have anything to put up there?
motion to accept the recommendation.
We have a motion to accept, second, Mr. Gilbert. So first motion came from Mrs. Blaber, second from Mr. Gilbert. Any comments, questions? All in favor? And at this point, we're moving towards adjournment. Motion to move to adjourn. First, Mrs. Rajat, second, Mrs. Stevenson. Any comments? All in favor? Okay, I've got just a couple of things I want to bring forward. The bottom of the page on the agenda doesn't mention April 4th. We do have the referendum on the land proposal. And then after that, we have April 11th meeting with mostly more things on budget, tenure recommendations, very important thing we continue to do, as well as recognizing our retirees.
Do we have community conversations coming up?
April 8th.
Yeah.
Oh, at April 8th, we have a community conversation. Okay?
Don't ask me where. Scano? I'm guessing Scano. No, that's May.
Oh, that's a May one. That's-
I'm thinking Scano.
Where's Vanessa?
Am I right? Scano? Oh,
No,
okay.
I'm going to say right now, my thing is from here, right on. My apologies. The April community conversation will be at Scano Cafeteria.
Okay. All right. That's it. Thank you very much. Thank you.